Those who know me will know that for a long time I felt that travel plays a key role in individual growth, healing and expansion. And Australia, for a long time, has been a popular destination for such travel. It's with this in mind that this week I was able to connect into that directly with Allie Delury and Pat Bonner, a wonderful couple from America who are exploring our country in a small orange van for 12 months. Having both served time in the US Air Force in demanding roles, these guys aren't just bumming about. Pat is refining his stand-up comedy skills across Australia, while Allie creates travel content for companies back in the US. Obviously, they are enjoying themselves and having a great time as well. This conversation gets real very quickly, and we cover a lot of ground, from the check to their identity from leaving the military and avoiding the draw of the shoulds of life that are pressed upon us, through to the relationship learnings from living in the crucible of a small van environment and the need to understand and articulate personal needs to those closest to you. Throughout this story, Australia and its people play a key role as the muse and backdrop to their journey and travels. Often Pat and Allie come back to the opportunities to enjoy real human connection as they explore the land and culture, either through conversation or laughter. Pat and Allie are just wonderful, lovely people, both individually and as a couple, and I was just so chuffed that they reached out and asked to come on the podcast, and I seized this opportunity. Whether you have travelled and want to reconnect back to that part of you, or you are thinking about taking the first steps to go out there, this is a must listen to. So enjoy Pat and Allie. Hello and welcome back to WA Real. I'm your host, Bryn Edwards. Today we're going to have a bit of fun. Today I have two guests all at once. Today, because let's not forget, Australia is a great place to come and travel. In fact, we have loads of tourists, and I myself came on a big adventure, which was sort of a coming to manhood in my latitudes. Anyway, so today we're going to have a look at Australia through the eyes of foreigners as well, with my guests, Allie Delury and Patrick Bonner. Bonner, I got it out.
Yeah, no, so nice you had to say it twice.
Yeah, there you go. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks, yeah.
So, guys, where are you from?
Colorado, Fort Collins, Colorado. So, if you're unfamiliar, that's by the mountains.
Yep.
Yeah.
The cool part of the U.S.
The cool part of the U.S.
Yes.
Colorado, cool. And just give me an overview. Tell me about your travels, because right now, I mean, we were going to do it in the van, but right now there's a funky looking orange van parked right outside.
Oh yeah, the magic tool bus. You want to give the overview?
Yeah, for sure. So we came over here from the States back in November. We're here for a year. We're doing a work and holiday visa kind of thing, and we got the van within our first month. And it's been awesome. We've had the flexibility to go to Adelaide. We're here now in Perth, to the southern part of Western Australia. So it's just been such a wild ride, literally and figuratively.
Yeah, it's been great. And great hospitality here in Australia.
Yeah.
People have been really friendly.
Yep.
Cool. I'm going to ask you about that in a bit. So just to get a bit of an overview and an idea of you two, because look, I didn't just decide to do a podcast. You know, Ali reached out to me last week, and I didn't just decide to pick any old, soap dodging backpackers. I could go,
dirty hippies.
Fremantle and find a shit ton of those. So, tell me a bit about you two, because you're both veterans.
That's right.
In America. So, for the listener, these are not some teenage, spotty, soap dodging.
Yeah, we've had an interesting background. So we just both met while we were living in Italy. We were both stationed there in the Air Force. We were both Air Force officers. I don't want to speak for you, Al. I don't want to tell your story. But so I was a Joint Terminal Attack Controller, which means I would embed with usually Army units, and I would control airstrikes. So a combat-heavy job, very stressful, and I did that for about 8 years.
So you're the dude that, puts the laser on the... Paints it up. Is that what it's called?
You've got good terminology there. A little bit too much Call of Duty, maybe. But yeah, that's the exciting part of the job.
Yes.
In all actuality, I'd say 90% of it is hanging around in garrison, doing paperwork, that type of stuff as an officer. But the 10% is combat intensive. So a lot of deployments. I did Afghanistan and Iraq, and then after 8 years, as a captain, you kind of advance or you rank out of kind of doing that stuff, which I found to be boring, like all the admin stuff.
Yeah.
So as I progressed in rank, I kind of lost interest in the paperwork aspect of the job and decided to get out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's really my story too. I did 2 years as a public affairs officer, so I was essentially doing PR overseas in Italy. That's how I met Pat. And then the last 3 years of my military career, I was a combat camera officer, so I was in charge of training airmen to go out and document combat from the air and the ground. So that was so fun. I got to travel all over, deploy to cool places, and just try to be a little bit of a badass. Not like Pat, but...
Well, I mean, combat camera's pretty badass.
Yeah, it was so fun. But as an officer, you can only really do that for 3 years.
You got a camera, not a gun.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to carry so much stuff. It's ridiculous. Like, I would have, like, an M9, an M4, and, like, 2 camera bodies, all my lenses, all my gear, PPE, so... It was a lot, and especially as a dainty little woman, sometimes it's tough to kind of go out there with all that stuff. But it was so fun, and it taught me so much about documenting travel, which I got to do later on, and all that good stuff.
So just quickly, why the forces? Why join them?
Well, that's a good question. Nobody really joins the military if things are going great. So I joined when I was, I did ROTC, which is a Reserve Officer Training commissioning program. So basically in college you can compete for a scholarship and then you owe the military some time after you graduate. So I needed a way to pay for school because my freshman year I kind of messed around a little bit too much and they yanked my academic scholarship. So I needed money if I wanted to graduate. So I looked at the Air Force and looked like a pretty good program. That seemed to be where the smart people went if they were going to join the military. So I was like, all right, I think I might be smart. I'll try that. They accepted me. They gave me a scholarship, and then I owed them time afterwards. And to tell you the truth, my first 7.5 years in the military it was a lot of fun. I met great people, and I definitely don't regret it. But it was definitely spurred by a little bit of patriotism, but a lot of necessity.
Right.
Yeah.
And what about yourself?
Honestly, same. I mean, primary reason was to piss off my family a little bit because I was rebellious and, I wanted to do something. Yeah, because I'm the first person in my family, in my generation to join the military. So it's not like I had people to look up to where I'm like, oh, I want to do that. I just kind of did it on my own. But it was kind of the same reason, honestly. I was in a really competitive journalism program at the University of Minnesota, Twin Cities in Minneapolis. And I got in to their school, and they were really strict about the grades that you needed to get. I partied a little too much my first semester, so I got booted and waitlisted from the school. And they said, we're not going to consider you unless you turn it around your second semester freshman year. So I was kind of panicking, and I was like, oh, okay, I need to think of something because I might be kicked out of college. And I looked at ROTC, the same program, as a way to pay for school. And I got wrapped up in my journalism career while I was doing that program. So I was a little bit of the black sheep, both within the military community and the media community while I was going through all of that. So that was an interesting learning curve. But same thing. I did not know what to expect with the military. I got to Italy. I was 22 years old. Benghazi had just happened. And I was kind of put in charge of the crisis communication strategy for all of that as a 22-year-old. So I spent only 2 years in Italy, but really I aged like 10 years of my life in my maturity. But it was such a good experience, and it really set everything up for what I ended up doing later on in my life, both with the military and outside of the military. So yeah, kind of same deal.
So when you leave the military, it can't be easy because it's such a struggle. From my understanding, I've not been there.
Yeah.
I did go to a boys' boarding school.
Yeah, similar.
A lot of people say similar.
Yeah, a lot of the hazing. Transferable.
There's a shit ton of structure. You do this, do that, and it strikes me as a real level of indoctrination, and that can become part of your. I can imagine you're part of your identity. So when that's pulled out, it's no longer there.
Yeah, you're kind of fed a sense of purpose when you're in. So that, at least for me, when I got out, It felt like the rug was kind of pulled out from under me purpose-wise. I took a job as a pharmaceutical salesman, so, selling pharmaceutical drugs pretty easy, it's lucrative, but it was just... It felt like I was spinning my wheels.
Yeah.
I didn't get any...
For life,
Yes, exactly. And I was having the same conversation with doctors and clinics, and it was just the day in, day out. It was Groundhog's Day. Same stuff every single day. And that was... You didn't get that in the military. You had kind of the fraternity or the brotherhood. I was in a combat-centric job, so it was almost entirely male. Men in that job, so it was definitely like a brotherhood too.
Yeah.
So the support structure around that, you had friends built in, you worked out every morning, then you worked with them in the office, and then you deployed and went to war with them. So there was like a very strong bond, even with people that you had nothing in common with.
Especially even the training is, from my understanding, is like the pursuit of excellence, because your life it depends upon.
Yes,
When you leave
absolutely.
that,
Yes.
not everybody wants to aspire to excellence.
You're 100%.
Everyone quite enjoys diving down to the lowest common denominator.
No, you're 100% right on that. My job is very competitive too. So like everybody was striving. They were pushing each other to get better. And if you weren't good, like you were ostracized. That was, if you didn't take your job seriously, you were the lowest common denominator. People didn't want to be around you. So it really didn't matter where you stood politically, what your personality type was, even your sexual orientation, any of that stuff. It didn't matter. If you were trying to be the best in your job, you were part of the brotherhood. And that's it. So going into civilian world, it definitely wasn't like that. You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, I mean, they tell you when you're transitioning out of the military, they make you go through this like very short abbreviated course where they teach you how to write a resume and try to integrate you back into civilian life. And for me, it was easier. Seriously,
so funny.
I know, real life. Like it's you go through it. It's a requirement. And for me, I had a civilian career before the military, so it wasn't as daunting for me to leave. But a lot of people, if you're doing that for 20 years and you've never had to write a resume before, you've never had to compete for a job before, like all of that, I mean, it's so much all at once to deal with. And a lot of people struggle with, just having a community outside of the military, a community who understands, who has gone through it, who maybe saw the same stuff you have, good or bad. And really the brotherhood, it is so tight, and it's for in the US, what is it, 1% of the population is military?
Yep.
So you're just already such a small percentage, and that is really, really tough. And even me, someone who did stuff before the military to get out, I struggled as well to kind of find that balance and find people who really could understand what I went through. Because I would say combat camera, and they'd be like, oh, that's... what? Like, that's cool, but can you run an ad campaign with Google AdWords? And I'm like, what? I never had to do that, but my skills are like so much more qualified than, and so it's tough trying to explain that to people. And that in and of itself is like a whole new journey where you have to kind of reinvent yourself and find yourself again.
And surely in there as well, you'll have seen some stuff.
Yes.
You'll have been in some stressful, traumatic situations.
That's true. Yes.
Do you get much support for that?
The military's getting a lot better with it. I'm not going to say they're perfect. I think the suicide rates kind of show that they're not. The suicide rates have held pretty consistently high over the last several years, and I think that's a byproduct of almost 20 years of war. That's but they're figuring it out. I think they understand that it takes a lot more back end support for psychologically to remove that stigma. I know I went through some real low points when I got out. When I was in, it was just like, okay, this is the running pace. I can keep pace here. We're all in it. We all get it. And then
it's normalized.
Yes, it absolutely is normalized. And then I took myself out of that situation, and I lost that brotherhood, that support, and I felt isolated. And we'd done the distance thing. We'd gone back and forth, and it just compounds and compounds and compounds until you're at the point where like, whoa, how did I get here? Mentally, how did I let myself slip to this point where my brain is now poisoning me with,
What were some of the things it was poisoning you?
I mean, you just have like the depression, you have suicidal thoughts, but not necessarily like you want to kill yourself. You just like you start feeling that way, and you start like having these images in your head, and you're like, I know this is wrong. how long have I been feeling this way? Why aren't I talking about this? And I think a lot of that is a stigma self-derived. You don't want to feel weak. You don't want to.
Coming from the forces.
Yeah. People who have seen way worse than you, done way harder things than you. So like, can I justify feeling this bad about myself even? And you start feeling like that, and you start like, okay, unpack that, put that on the side, and then start understanding the thoughts you're having and the depression you're in. And I think that's like one of the first steps of getting out of it is you're like, okay, my brain is poisoning me right now. I can't trust my brain. And then you start kind of digging yourself out. You start treating yourself better, making sure you're taking care of yourself physically, drinking enough water, not drinking as much booze, like that's, you start just getting back on the right track and realizing, oh, okay, I don't have the same support structure with the same people around me that have been through the same things. I have to take care of myself in a different way.
Yeah. I think it's interesting too because PTSD and the effects of it can hit you differently and at different variables at different times. And a lot of people, they do like repeat deployments and they think, well, I've done this before and it was okay. I did this. The last deployment that I went on was over the summer and it meant more long distance for us. And I remember thinking going into it, well, we've done longer distance apart. We've done this before multiple times. Like it'll be okay, and it affected us differently this time, seemingly out of nowhere. I think just because we'd been doing it for so long that finally our brain was just like, no, like this isn't okay. Like you need to start
that scaffolding and support that you put around to make it okay.
Exactly.
Weakens because
it's stressed.
Because it's only scaffolding.
Yes.
That you build to tell yourself a story, to make yourself feel better.
Yeah.
Right.
When it's not really real.
It's temporary for sure. Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, that has been a very recent struggle for us and something that we had to navigate through our relationship. And we talk about it a little bit on our podcast. I think episode 5, we really like dive deep into what that did to our relationship and how we got through that and all that good stuff. So,
We'll come to the podcast in a minute.
Yeah.
So, Australia.
Yes.
Why?
So, I mean, we both lived abroad. So I think one of the commonalities we share is the need or the lust for adventure, something more, and wanting to travel. And we both lived abroad, and it's great living wild places, but living in a place that speaks English is definitely very convenient. So we knew we wanted to live abroad again, and we'd both seen Europe, and to be honest, England is kind of a bore. So we figured, let's go to Australia. They seem to have the infrastructure for kind of a backpacker's van life, which I think would suit us to try long term or short term, I guess.
Yeah.
But that's essentially the first step in why we chose Australia.
Yeah. What did you know about Australia beforehand?
Crocodile Dundee.
The animals are going to kill you.
They got a bunch of crocodiles. Crocodiles, poisonous snakes, tarantulas, great white sharks. Boomerangs.
Outback.
So this is like some mythical National Geographic place.
That's exactly
1,000%.
right.
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly it.
So where did the idea or the inkling to come to Australia come about?
Oh, the last year.
Well, we kind of kicked it around. It'd be great if we lived in Australia for a little while, and then we're like, yeah, that would be great. I think we could do that, and we're trying to find a time to do it. And I just liked my job. Allie was coming back from her deployment, and we were kind of looking at our schedule, and we're like, if we don't do it now, we're never going to do it.
Exactly.
We're engaged, so we're going to be married. We'll likely have kids at some point. So if all those things start coming, we can't do it after that. Yeah. So we're just like, if we're going to do it, let's quit our jobs and let's make the move.
Yeah.
And we did that about 2 months ago.
Yep.
For better or for worse, here we are.
Yeah.
Was there anything like, obviously, I mean, I don't know, you don't strike me as like anally obsessive planners that you've got every day planned out.
No.
Like we'll go here and we'll do this sort of thing.
Yeah.
But did you have any sort of idea about what you wanted to get out of the trip before?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm a stand-up comedian. I've been doing that for several years at this point. And I wanted to go to a place.
More about that.
Yeah, I wanted to go to a place that speaks English because of what I didn't want to take a step back in my growth as a stand-up comedian. And Australia has a pretty vibrant scene.
Yeah.
Though there are pockets, there's a pocket in Perth, there's a little bit in Adelaide, Melbourne, Sydney are obviously big markets, Brisbane.
Yeah.
So, we figure if we're going to travel around, we can grab a van, travel to all these places. I want to get good at stand-up. I want to get better at stand-up. I think I'm okay. And we wanted to get our podcast going, like with good content, stuff that people would find interesting.
Yeah.
And van lifing through Australia, we thought would be compelling content for two veterans with a different worldview, with stand-up comedy, and as a content creator and photographer. We thought that would be pretty good.
For sure. Yeah. So I do content creation for various travel clients, one of them being Tastemade Travel. It's a big online social media-esque travel content hub based in LA and New York. And so Australia, I mean, that's so easy to get travel content because you guys have everything here, right? Like you obviously have the beaches, you have amazing, vibrant, diverse cities.
The colours, the skies.
Yeah, you got the outback. Like you just have a lot that, everyone goes to Europe for like their Euro trip. They go to Southeast Asia, they do Bali. So I think people are kind of itching to see what else is out there. And Australia, I don't want to say is underrepresented, but I think there's just so much that people assume about Australia, stuff that we assumed about Australia that just barely hits the surface, right? Like it's just a glacier of stuff to do. And we've been so surprised since being here. Some of the places we've seen, like Esperance, blew our minds.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Like the Nullarbor, I didn't even know that was a thing before we had to trek across it. So it's just, there's a lot that I think people don't know about Australia that is fun and cool and different and exciting. And for travel companies around the world, they want that content. So,
and people,
no brainer.
In this context, people meaning, guys back in America.
Yeah, well, foreigners, anybody who would travel here. We've met a lot of Europeans. We bought our van from a European.
Yeah, an Estonian guy.
Yeah, an Estonian. So I think everybody's kind of interested in coming to Australia.
Yeah.
And, I mean, we love showcasing it.
Yeah.
So before you got here, what was reception from, close friends and family when you went, hey, we're going to clear off for a year and live in a van in Australia? I was, what?
That's exactly, at least my family was like, wait, what are you doing? Like, you're 30 years old. Shouldn't you be maybe living in the house that you bought, or shouldn't you be trying to get like a well-paying job somewhere? It was shock from my friends and family.
Yeah, a little caution and concern from my family. But I think my friends, there was definitely a tinge of jealousy.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, when we were telling them, they were just like, oh, so many people talk about that. You guys are actually doing it. Yeah. So I think there's a feeling that a lot of people wish they could just pick up and go a little bit more than they can.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, you would trigger off a few people who are like, oh,
yes,
God, you're doing that.
Yeah, you can just leave it behind. You're doing it.
Just trying to make it happen.
Yes.
Yeah, and that coupled with triggering off other people who are giving you the shoulds.
Yes.
The whole linear life journey. Oh, you've done this now, so now the next step is this.
Yes.
It's going to be this, and then it's going to be that. Well, no.
Yeah. And we both what I did in the Air Force was, highly selective, very difficult thing, and it was kind of like living out a childhood dream, So you'd already lived one lifetime. Is how I felt.
Yeah.
So let's do something else that's crazy, that's fulfilling, and
different.
Yeah, that will stroke all those urges that I have for adventure.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. So briefly, you've been here a couple of months?
Yeah, 2 months. We just eclipsed the 2-month mark.
Yeah.
Cool. Places you've been to? Just summary?
So we started in Melbourne, and then we moved over to Adelaide. We stopped a couple of places on the way: Cactus Beach, Coffin Bay, Port Lincoln, and Esperance, and now out here in Perth.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask, there's the two of you in that little van, which I've seen outside. How do you function as a couple?
With occasional headphone breaks from each other. But
it's become a cauldron.
It's a little bit.
No, not cauldron, a crucible.
So far, it hasn't been that bad. What
have you learned about actually? Particularly because you were saying, you were on deployment for a period of time, so absence and distance make the heart grow fonder, and you idealise people, and and now, kaboom, There ain't no
now it's the
distance.
extreme.
You
The
go from
opposite.
one end to the other.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you hit a good point. I have already learned so much about Pat, just having to live in such a small space for such a long period of time. And back in the States, even when we were together, we kind of had our own lives a little bit still. Like Pat obviously still did comedy. He had friends who did comedy. I did other stuff. I did content creation. I had friends who were photographers in the area who I went to school with. So we were always able to take that break if we needed it. But here it's a lot harder to take that break because we have to at least drive to the same spot together to take that break. So I don't know, for me, I've learned so much about Pat, and
but you have to instill some real boundaries, and actually, like, I need time out. So instead of just, because look, this is me, and I might be talking across you, Pat, but it's easy to take the natural break. Right? Oh, I'm going to go to work now. Or my friend rang up and asked me, want to go for a drink? I'm going to do that. So you get your little time. But here in the crucible of the van, it's like, I want some time. So that means I'm selfishly taking time out for me.
So no, like we do, like what I've learned is how to communicate. I think a little bit, just like directly when I'm feeling that way, I can just say, "Hey, I'm gonna read. I'm gonna grab this book. I'm just gonna go sit on the beach for I just need." I need nothing. I need to just be alone for a second.
And take a walk.
And she's done the same, and it's honestly, it's kept us pretty good.
Did you get that at the start, or did you have to come to a bit of a?
We had to figure it out a little bit the hard way, I think, to kind of realize, like, okay, like we need space right now. Like,
I'm just grumpy.
We're dehydrated, we're tired, we haven't slept because we're incognito camping. Like, okay, we just need a little bit of a break. Like, I need to work out, he needs to read or listen to a podcast. So we've had to kind of come to those climaxes in the frustration and the just build up of anger, just not because of each other per se, but because of us personally, just still going through our own whatever as we're traveling. Because I think people look at what we're doing and they think, oh my God, you guys are doing a year-long vacation. That is so cool. And it's like, but it's still life.
Not holiday.
That's true.
I remember one of the most fucking irritating things in my life is 1998. I went to South America for 4.5 months, right? Nice. Blew my brains out. Right, and I came back and somebody in the local town went, how was your big holiday? And I was like, fuck you.
You still have to live. You still go through life, even if it's in a different place. I think people assume as long as you're not home, you're just on vacation. That's definitely not the case.
It hasn't been bad, though. I honestly, I mean... I haven't had to take that much time. It's not like every day I need a break from her. It's just like every once in a while, if I'm driving, I'll just put on a podcast. It's just kind of for me, and she'll sit and edit her stuff, and we just we take our breaks and focus on like whatever it is that we're doing independently. But we're never too far apart.
No.
And I suppose the great thing about that is you're learning how to, self-care.
Yes.
Still in that close environment of the relationship.
And forces you to put like her. I have to continually think about her needs, because if I'm not meeting them, she's gonna bite my head off. Like I'm gonna make her irritable and grouchy.
What is now? What's your things though?
Just making sure that I'm rubbing her back as the sun goes down, that type of thing. I'm not closed off. I'm not thinking internally all the time. I'm taking care of her as much as I can, because that still pays off for me. Keeping her happy makes me less grouchy as well, and I think she's found the same. I think it's just certainly helped us grow. If anything, it's made me more sure of my efforts to marry the woman.
And I mean, it's taught me at least what you do to self-soothe. You know what I mean? Like what your self-care routine looks like. Because like I said, back in the States, it was easy just to be like, all right, I'm going to get a drink with friends, and then we're separate. We're doing our own thing, but we're not seeing what the other person needs to, self-soothe. So I've been able to see that firsthand, really kind of for the first time, and be like, oh, okay, this is what makes him happy in these times of stress. Like,
and
I'll make sure to
do life.
Yeah, exactly. So it's been a crazy learning curve, all for the better, I think.
Yeah.
But you do hear the nightmare stories. I follow a couple van life influencers on social media, and there was this one girl who was same deal, engaged. They were going to do the whole thing in Australia. They got 2 weeks in and called off the wedding. Called off everything. Yeah, and she did like a whole emotional post about it, and really it just came down to they were living in this fantasy in their minds their whole life. Like, this is the pedestal I've put this person up on. This is how great our life's going to be in the van. And they didn't even consider the stresses and the negatives that come with that. And I think if you live in that mindset, of course it's a recipe for disaster, because you need to resolve all conflict within the constraints of the van. You know, you don't have the option to do anything different. So I do see a lot of crash and burn stories. But I, with full confidence, can say that we are not.
Yeah, we're keeping it off.
Yeah.
You bring a fire test.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's a guy recommended for anybody who's engaged.
Seriously.
See if you want to.
Yeah.
So that's you as a couple. Obviously, I found when I was traveling that, you know, you have so much more space and time and less distraction, and there are moments, you know, driving on another boy, just looking out the window and just looking out the window, looking out the window, and so stuff will come up, you know, and it can be awkward, it can be exciting, it can be, you know, tear jerking and stuff like that. What sort of stuff? So that, you know, that we talked about you two together, but what about individually as well? This is one, because I found that traveling is also one of the most cathartic and healing things you can do.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, I stress out about, you know, breaking off from that, like you said, that step-by-step success through life. Like, oh, you're at this part of your life now, you got to go do this. Oh, you bought a house, and now you got to get married, and you got to have a kid. So, you know, I grew up a pretty conservative family, raised Catholic, so very tight structure. So there's still parts of me that are like, oh my God, I'm breaking from all of that structure.
Yeah.
Am I making a huge mistake? Am I, you know, Allie has hitched her wagon to me a little bit. Am I ruining her life? You know, I'm like going through these things of like self-doubt that I have to kind of, I have to extinguish myself and like tell myself, this is our life. This is my life. These are the choices I get to make because I'm in charge of my own shit. So and I'm
form your own identity.
Yes, exactly. And so I have to keep kind of coaching myself to that point where it's just like, I don't trust the structure. There are plenty of people who've followed those steps to ruin. You know, there are tons of people who have followed those steps to deep unhappiness. Yeah. And what I'm doing is I'm making me happy, and I think it's making.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Anytime he has those doubts, I'm like, shut up. Look at where we are. Look at what we're doing. This is the coolest thing I've ever done in my life, and it's because of you. It's because of your support. It's because you're doing this with me. You know, so sometimes we can get just inundated with the stress of like doubt, and is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Like, am I meeting these benchmarks that I've made for myself in all of these different categories of my life? But
stories,
I mean,
pressure.
Yeah, it's and we
grip on what reality should
exactly, and social media doesn't help, right? It makes things worse because you see the best of everyone else's life.
Yeah, idealized everything.
You see that perfect, excellent slither of their life, and then your perfect, excellent slither of someone else's, and you stick all those slithers together, and it's like, I'm shit compared to that.
I just have to force myself to kind of snap out of it and be like, this is like, we're doing something really cool right now. Like, and this is just, we're never going to be able to do anything of this magnitude, at least for a while after this. So, I mean, I'm loving every minute of it, the good and the bad.
I'll challenge that assumption, but wait, this is not,
this
is not a counselling. It's interesting you bring up the social media as well, because a big thing that I've been thinking about and deep diving in just in the last couple of weeks, because I'm quite a stickler for my podcast in that I've done two interviews via Zoom in the whole time, and I didn't enjoy them, and I plan never to do it again.
Yeah.
Unless, I don't know, like, you know, the Queen rings me up. So I'd really love to be on WA Radio. I would consider it. But, you know, I make a real point of having the real conversation with people. It means I get to meet different and interesting people. And I've been deep diving more into this and the fact that, you know, when people talk, they're exchanging information like at so many different levels. You know, the way our heart beats, you know, is talking to one another. The way we're breathing is all syncing up because we're all in rapport. Our pheromones, this, so much level, so much on so many levels. And also, when you do actually have a proper, real conversation with someone, it helps to shape and maintain your identity. Whereas, you know, social media is not designed to provide that healthy feedback, and so therefore the place I'm getting to now is just by even me just doing this once a week, twice a week, the amount of times I get to do it, you know, it has a healing cathartic effect for me as a human, right? And so the other thing I wanted to ask you guys was, because you'll be meeting new and interesting people, like even when you go to the fucking shop, right?
Yeah.
Because they're just different. Yes. Because you're from America and this is Australia. So how have you found that?
We were talking about that this morning a little bit. People are very outgoing. You know, we had a conversation while we were grilling up a little bacon at the park today, and there was over, 40 meters away, some guy throwing a stick with his dog was chatting with us, just hollering like, "Oh, where are you guys from?" And we're like, "Oh, the States." And he's like, "How you loving it here?" And we're like, "We're loving it." And like, people are funny. They're quick to make a joke, you know. And I feel like, I don't know, people are a little bit more closed off in the States. I don't know if it's because they're absorbed with their phone or whatever they've got going on, or maybe we're just used to people in the city kind of having that bristled approach to life. But people are very, very forthright in like throwing a comment your way, like joking around with you. We saw a woman on the beach who was just commented on your bikini and was just like, "Oh, I can't wear that," and then like hiked it up her butt cheeks and was like, "See?" And we're like, "Whoa." We're like, "What are you are wild." So it's been pretty nice. People are very, very kind and they're warm, I guess, is really the warm conversationally.
Have you found yourself getting pulled into some really, what I would call, there's two types of conversations to me. There's the transactional one. "Hey, you enjoyed it? Yeah. You're always from the States? Yeah. You live in Australia? Yeah, we're proud of Australia. Da, da, da."
Yeah.
But then there's the more deeper relational ones where you get to super relate to people and exchange ideas. You must be getting.
I find that mostly with the friends I've made in comedy so far. People are like they're very interested in my point of view, being from the States, which has a very robust stand-up comedy environment. So does Australia. So they're picking my brain about that. And next thing you know, we're talking kind of worldview stuff and kind of their life philosophy. And it kind of grows and grows and grows. And we've made some pretty good friends that way.
Yeah, it's been so unreal. So we started in Melbourne doing the Work Away program. Are you familiar?
It's been so real, but
yes.
Sorry.
And it was like a horrible situation. We had like a psycho as a host that we were trying to get out of the situation, and we didn't have the van yet. We didn't have any sort of like accommodations, so we reached out on couch surfing, which is something I did in my 20s when I was backpacking Europe. I haven't done it since.
Is it a website?
It is. So it's a website where people offer up their couch for free in exchange for just a good hang, really. Like someone to meet who's foreign, who's traveling through, and you're supposed to kind of do like, cook your local food for them or, exchange something, but everything's for free.
Yeah.
Which
is more of an energetic exchange.
It is, yeah. And it's something that really died off after Airbnb came about, because then people were like, well, I can just rent out my couch and make money.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to do that instead. So the network died quite a bit, but we met this guy, this Indian guy named Kartik on it, who took us in super last minute.
Yeah, he was new to Melbourne. We were new to Melbourne, and he was just cool.
Yeah, we slept on his floor. He lived in this high-rise apartment. He had a beautiful view of the city, and it was just amazing. He was like an angel. He truly saved us. Yeah,
he got us out of that work away thing. Was a almost abusive. We were almost like indentured servants there. We were like,
Yeah.
okay, we got to get out of here. And Kartik came to the rescue. He's a pretty good dude.
Amazing. We stayed for like a couple days and just enough to buy the van. But then we also met a Scottish comedian in Adelaide who, our very first night in Adelaide, he did the comedy show. We had a couple beers with him and he's like, why don't you stay the night at my place? Like I usually Airbnb it out anyway. You guys are cool if you need a place to crash. And he let us stay for like a week.
Yeah, a little over.
On the beach.
Yeah, right on the beach. It was great fellow, a Scottish dude named Baz. So shout out to Baz.
And so we've just been blown away by the people we've met and the generosity and people who, like Baz, the Scottish guy, he had done van life before. So he was kind of just paying it forward. He was like, I know where you guys what you're doing, what you're going through, and I know I would have appreciated this had I been going around the country. So here you go, like place is yours. I was like, this is unbelievable.
Go to a stand-up show. They'll like grab my notebook and they're like, you got to talk to this guy. You got to go to this place. You got to check this dude out. Contact this person, and then then they set you up for the whole week, and you're like, okay, now I have plans every night. Which is pretty cool.
And there's something about just sort of, if you were back at home, you'd be making it happen, controlling it, forcing the shit out of life.
Yes.
There's a certain amount of surrender and allowing.
Yeah.
And just trusting and allowing the generosity of others.
It's just being open to that, I think, is really been the difference. We've been open and people have really stepped up and helped when we've needed it, and even when we haven't, people have been pretty great.
Yeah. Well, I mean, back home, you have so much more. You have a roof over your head. You have a network of friends. You have a job. So you don't really need or seek out any of that extra stuff. You're not looking for extra friends. You're not looking for things to do on the weekend because you have friends that have plans to invite you out. So when you give all of that up and you're just vulnerable and it's literally just you and a vehicle and you don't know where you're going and you don't know where you're staying every night, you have to be open to all of that because, you don't have anything to hang on to.
Vast ocean of possibility and probability.
Yeah, you just find that people are pretty cool. People are pretty awesome.
Yeah. So it's been super cool to see that all firsthand.
So this isn't just a swan about. You're doing content creation and you're being a stand-up comic.
That's right.
Tell me a bit more about the content creation and is that actually earning you some money while you travel?
It is. Yeah, it's crazy. Content creation is actually kind of a new career. When I went to college, I wasn't taking courses on content creation. So it's essentially now anyone with photo, video, editing background. So anything that you can sell to a company to exist on something like social media that they can promote, whatever. So in the past, I used to do like photojournalism. So usually you're employed with a newspaper and you take photos for this newspaper and you write articles for the newspaper. It's just you're employed by one entity. Yes. But now, because everything is just so fluid and it doesn't really matter where a photo comes from anymore, companies, whether it's selling a product or like a travel company like Taste Made Travel, they just want people to create content for them. Doesn't matter. They don't have to be employed with that organization. They can just say, hey, I like your work. I want you to make a video on this, this, and this that we're going to use to promote our brand. Cool. So it's just now become like a pool. Like everyone now is in the same pool. You're not employed with an unless you're really, really, really good and you're like a repeat, whatever. So I started doing actual content creation right after I got out of the military. I got hired for like a 4-month gig with a company called Semester at Sea. And it's a program that sails around the world and it's open to college students, based in the US, but open to anybody. So anyone can apply and do just a semester at sea. So I was the lead photographer for that. I was in charge of all their social media. So I was literally just hired for the 4 months to create as much travel content in whatever capacity I thought was appropriate. So photos, videos, social media, snacks, whatever. So now there's like a real boom for that. And there's been a real rise in creatives, they call themselves now. So like Taste Made Travel, I got hired on as a freelance filmmaker for them in July. And it's awesome. Like, they pay me per video. And if it's something that they like, they'll pay me. If it's something they don't like, I don't get paid, so it has to be good. Like, it has to be.
You get instant feedback on your work.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I haven't actually dealt with that.
Like you.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the risk with freelancers, is because you're not actually employed, because you're not working by the hour. Like, everything has to be your best. Like, and you're competing with yourself constantly, because you're like, I want to get paid, so this has to be good. Like, I have to make this good. So that's been super flexible, because basically what I do is I just pitch ideas along our route, the places that we've been that I think they'd be interested in covering. And if they green light it, then I go, I shoot it, I do all the coordination, and I produce a product. And if they like it, they pay me. So that's made us a little bit of money since being out here. But I also do social media management for various clients in the States. So these are just like startup companies. They're all kind of fair trade-esque, because that's really big in America right now. So I just manage their social media accounts from over here. So I schedule all the content out so that it gets published at noon Denver time or whatever. And I take content that already exists and I just make it look pretty on like a social media grid. So there's a lot of opportunities now to work abroad, which is awesome. And I've been trying to take as much opportunity as I could doing all that. So
your last video got like 2.5 million views.
Yeah, like
right?
2.7 million views.
Yeah,
it was
so
a video on candy canes, so it's random. Like it
was a candy cane factory.
Yeah, back in the States.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So that's been really good for us, just in financing the trip along the way and getting just better at the thing that I love to do, which is creating content.
I like how you've, because think about it, like, you're doing your job wherever you go, in the place that you go. You as a comedian.
Yes.
Listener, I'm pointing at Pat. Whereas you're still doing a job that's located in America, but you're doing it remotely.
Yes.
Which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
There's so much more opportunity to do that.
It's awesome. Like, the flexibility is crazy. Like, sometimes we spend a whole day in a cafe and I just work for like 8 hours straight, just doing everything. And then that way, the next couple of days, we don't have to do anything at all. We can just travel and have fun. And so it's just crazy flexible, and it allows us to really do the things that we want to do. And we've gotten to do some cool stuff because of that.
Yeah.
Like, we went to an oyster farm in Coffin Bay. We did shark diving in Port Lincoln.
Oh, wow.
Sea lion diving.
Yeah.
We climbed the Adelaide Oval.
Yeah.
If you can do that, you can just like walk on the
Yeah.
edge of it. So we've had a good time, and it's stuff that we would be doing anyway if we were here. So we're able to do it for a heavy discount in exchange for content.
Yeah. So stand-up comedian.
Yes.
Did that start while you were in the forces?
Right after. So,
Right
being in the military, they kind of station you away from anything cool.
So what was this, like a yin to your yang or something?
No, so I've always thought I was kind of funny, and I've always been a huge stand-up comedy fan. So as soon as the opportunity presented itself, I moved from upstate New York, where there's nothing funny at all, to Colorado, where they had a pretty vibrant comedy scene. And Allie kind of dared me. She was like, well, you keep talking about it. Why don't you go up, see if you like it?
You poking him?
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
And I gave it a try. I loved it. I bombed my first time, but that I was a little bit delusional, thinking I should still do it. And I've been doing it ever since, as many times as I can a week. Getting up. I guess a little bit of when you do well. And you hear the crowd laughing consistently. They're laughing hard. I don't know if there's a better feeling than that.
Yeah.
There's just you own it. It's the best. You feel like the man. So there's definitely this. That's the self gratification. I like making people laugh too. To me, there's nothing better. So being around funny people it's awesome. It's just a very good byproduct of a fun hobby.
Have you had to transition your act for Australia?
A little. I find you can poke fun at being American. Like, there's like aspects that you can just shine that wouldn't work being in America, so I can make fun of Americans at large, and that seems to be probably maybe hackish. I don't know if it's hackish. I think I've got a decent perspective, but it's I can taper it to that, so I can juxtapose Australian life to what I found in America, and vice versa, and that works pretty well.
I've got to ask you, what's your funniest joke?
Oh my God. I got a bunch that work pretty well, but here's, I guess, a quick one. I just started wearing flip-flops for the first time in like 30 years. My feet are free. I'm calling them my Nelson Sandelas. So that's a quick hitter, a little wordplay. Australia's like wordplay, yeah. Usually, though, someone screams out from the crowd, "Thongs! The cold thongs!"
Yeah,
and I'm just like, all right, here we go.
I'm from England, so I got that.
Yes.
I understand what flip-flops.
Yes, yeah.
There you go. And so you said earlier on, this is picking up, and you're getting suggestions, and you get the opportunity to.
Yeah. So the more I do it, I've been doing it for a bunch of years, so I'm not bad at it. I'm not a noob. You know, I know how to handle a crowd. I know how to handle myself. I've got a lot of material. So just coming into a new place is really the only daunting thing. Coming into like going from Melbourne to Adelaide, you got to break into that scene, and every scene is territorial. You know, everybody doesn't want an outsider coming in. If especially, who's this new guy? I've never seen him before. He hasn't hit every single open mic or every single show. So they're resistant to just putting you on, unless you're a traveling comedian with credentials and you've opened for big people or you are a big name. So, like, breaking into a new scene every time we travel that's probably the biggest challenge or the biggest hurdle. But it only takes one show, and then they're like, "Oh, this person knows what they're doing. Go to this person. You know, talk to this person about getting booked here. Go to this place. Show up. Sign up here. Here's the Facebook group that we're all part of." So, as soon as you do well, and they realize that you're not some chump moving in on their territory or their gigs, or taking opportunity away from them, they're extremely helpful. But I found every comedy scene is very consistently territorial, which is kind of fun.
Do you guys watch him all the time?
I do, yeah. I probably shouldn't, because open mics are just a place to test out your material. So it's not like the highest quality. It's like a showcase, you know? Like, I mean, because it's usually just, it's in a room and people are just trying out new stuff. So it sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I love it. I've learned so much about comedy. I didn't know anything before Pat started doing comedy. I didn't even really watch comedians ever. But we've gone to live shows with like big names. We've been able to obviously travel a whole bunch and do it. And even though I've heard all of his jokes a million times, I still love seeing the audience react to it. I love seeing, the other comedians and what they have. And comedy is just so... I don't know, like, it's surprising because I would think that there would be less and less to talk about with comedy. Like, oh, that joke's already been used, that topic's already been talked about by this person. But every time I go somewhere, there's just a new way to look at things that someone introduces me to, whether it's Pat or another comedian, where I'm like, that is so cool, that's so funny, and I never thought of it that way, and I never would have thought of it had I not gone to that show.
Yeah, it's all different perspectives. You see, it's like I think Dave Chappelle said recently when he accepted some award, he's like, every voice there is represented in comedy. Every viewpoint somebody has on stage. And like the more you see comedy, the more you realize that's true. There's tons of different perspectives. And like the comedians generally challenge themselves to find unique takes on old subjects. So you see a lot of it fails. There's a lot that is not funny, but there's a lot to respect about people just getting up there and trying.
100%. Yeah. But again, it's a human being standing up there on a stage talking to other human beings.
Yes.
As I did a podcast not so long ago with a guy called Paul Carter, who's just full of stories, right? Full of stories. He's just led a fantastic life, and so it was an opportunity just to sit and listen. And I grew up with my dad and his friends, and they would always be telling jokes. And, we'd go to the pub and listen to them telling jokes, telling stories. And I just thought, this is one of the key things that men do, is that they can tell stories and they can tell jokes. And now, jokes seem to be, and for listeners who obviously this audio, is I'm just doing this, which is picking up my iPhone and going, oh, have you seen this one?
Yep.
And then you go, oh, yeah, that's funny. And there is no telling a joke there. There is no social interaction. It's me just showing you something.
Yeah, there's no craft to it. There's no personality beyond it. Yeah.
Drawing, and then just at the last minute changing the definition of a word to mean
Yes.
something else. You're like, oh yeah, that's really funny.
Yeah, you find though that like people are drawn to personality. So like the truer a person is on stage to themselves, like the more the audience will buy in. You can tell when someone's putting up a facade. You know, when someone's demonstrating false confidence, or even like worse, false modesty. You know, like the crowd will ditch you very quickly if you aren't striving to be the closest version of yourself up there. And so the crowd can smell dishonesty. And so it really forces you to get to know yourself, really take a hard audit of who you are, and bring that person to the stage. That's the biggest challenge of comedy, in my opinion.
You guys are chucking it all in. Van life, comedy.
Yeah. I mean, we decided to double down on what we assess we're good at. And so far it's been paying off.
Go and really find out whether that's true or not.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
As opposed to just cruising through the thin veneer of life unchallenged.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, we're putting ourselves through the crucible, like you said.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. So you also do a podcast.
Yeah, we do.
Yes.
What's it called? Tell me
It's
about
called Work Our Way, and it documents our adventure travel through Australia, but eventually beyond. Kind of my life through comedy, your life through content creation, and our life together through our relationship.
Yeah.
So we try to leave no stone unturned. I think we're getting better and better at that as our episodes go on.
Definitely.
So, why do a podcast?
That's a good question.
That's a really good question. Why did we do a podcast?
Well, I mean, because we want to show how big and fun the world is.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to, like, the problems we have, I think, in our relationship, not that they're huge problems or insurmountable problems, and not to dwell on the problems, but, like, I think are shared by people. You know, I think our perspective, as unique as it is something that is relatable. And I think it helps me get closer to my comedy. It helps me get closer to the person I want to be on stage, but it helps me get closer to you. And I think the more honest we are, like I said, people are drawn to that. And I think we wanted to challenge ourselves creatively. At least I did.
Yeah, well, it also is convenient because people already were like, you guys are going to Australia. You're going to be doing so much cool stuff. Where can we follow that? Like, are you guys going to be blogging? Are you guys going to be like giving us updates every month? Like, what? And so I think this helps our family stay remotely sane so they can tune in every week and hear what's going on. But, regardless of what happens on this trip, it'll be nice in like 5-10 years to listen back on these episodes and relive Australia because so much gets forgotten in the day-to-day. There's so many trips that I've taken throughout my life where I'm like, I didn't document any of it, and now I can't remember anything. I don't remember who I met, where I went. Like, I wish I had something solid that I could look back on, whether it was a journal or a blog or a podcast. And
They'll take you straight back.
Yeah, exactly. So
it's interesting, isn't it? Because I don't want to sound like an old bloke, but when I travelled, obviously there were no mobile phones. There was certainly no Facebook. I think it was only in 1998 when I went to South America did I actually get this thing called Hotmail.
Whoa, Hotmail.
And that was right at the end of the travel, right? And certainly my parents weren't on it. In fact, my parents are here from England, and they were only talking the other day about, Mum was talking about how literally it would be every 2 to 3 weeks she'd get like a quick phone call from me from South America going, oh yeah, alive.
Yes.
Just enough for the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Yep.
And then she'd literally just have to let me go.
Yeah.
Have to let me go.
It's a different time. Did you prefer that when you travel, or do you like the interconnectedness now?
That's a good question, because I think it's interesting because when you guys talk about actually having the conversations and recording them on the podcast, to me that's something real and tangible, obviously, because of what I do. But to me, I think there's a real power in that. And that's something real and authentic. It's everything counts. Like, look, I've just had this for breakfast in Sri Lanka. I've just had this for breakfast in Hawaii. You know, it's like, really, dude? Like, you know, I remember the first time I went to Byron Bay in 1994, and it's like, you know, it's the first place to see the sun come up in the whole of Australia, and everyone's there, and they've got like cameras with films, And when are you taking the picture? And I had my camera, and I remember just sitting there just going, I'm just going to remember this. I'm just going to make a mental note. And I went to Byron only 4 months ago, for the first time since 1994. And I stood there, and I can still to this day remember that picture. Mind you, I made a really big conscious effort to do that. But yeah, so I think there's a real balance between over bloody sharing, like just shit.
Yes.
Like, oh, look at me. I'm next to this incredible waterfall. So what does that mean? Like, really? You went to the waterfall and you had that picture. And then the chances are, as soon as the picture was taken, you're like, fuck, where can I go and have the next picture taken?
Right. It's just photo ops. Yeah.
And that gives me the shits, right?
Yes.
And this got me on a little soapbox here. But the actual journaling, I still have travel journals. And sometimes when I want to access some great part of myself or something different, I'll go and sit and read them for a while. And it, straight there.
Wow, yeah.
Straight there. And then what you're doing is the next level up to it, which is we're going to record the conversations and things that are coming up for us. So, yeah, what's been the reception of it?
Overwhelmingly positive. The more raw we keep it, like the more honest we are in our travels. Like we had that episode where I talked about my depression and our time apart and all of that, and we got really good feedback on that. I was worried right before we put it out. It's like, I don't know how this is going to be received, but I started getting butterflies about it, and the feedback was overwhelmingly positive. People still kind of write me and say, "Whoa, thanks for that episode. I didn't know you were going through that." Or they reach out, "Hey, I know I'm not in your circle, but feel free to reach out if you're ever feeling that way." And it's just like, wow, people, that resonates with people. Being open, honest, being real, I think is really what it comes down to. Is if you're not putting on a facade, people will be drawn to that.
Yeah, exactly. Totally agree.
I think I found that the more selfish I am about the podcast, the more selfish, like this. I really want to talk to this person about this, and so I will ask the questions that I see, and then that seems to bring people in.
Yeah, interesting.
It's real, and it's curiosity led, and it's exploratory and expansive.
Yes, absolutely. The fewer veneers there are between you and the people that you're trying to talk to, the better. Yeah,
and when I say selfish, sometimes I have the conversations that I want, and I capture them, and if everybody else listens to it and enjoys it, then that's a bonus too.
That's great.
And then that in and of itself becomes even more real.
Yes, absolutely. And people are drawn to enthusiasm. That's magnetic. Motivated people motivate people. Enthusiastic people enthuse people. Yeah.
So, switching tack now. I read something ages ago, and it's probably completely untrue, but it said something like, such a small percentage of Americans actually have passports, right? Yeah. And because of that, we don't really see many of them travel. And then there's the other thing about, there's so much in America that we can just travel inside of it anyway. So, if that's true, you guys are kind of rare in the fact that you've left the shores of America.
Yeah.
So how do you find Australians receiving you as Americans?
Pretty good, with the exception of leaving America at this time is it's kind of welcome because everything's so politically divided. You can't get away from politics in America.
Yeah.
Coming to Australia, kind of, except there's a sect of Australians that want to talk to us about American politics. Yeah, exactly. We get that question.
And guess what? You ain't getting that from me.
Yeah, well, excellent. I mean, not that we're fans of them, but that we don't care to talk about politics. We're happy to leave that back in America for dumb people to argue. We have no desire to do that, and I found that with, I guess, more just kind of hacky comedians who will come up to us and say, "Oh yeah, I did those Donald Trump jokes. How'd you feel about them?" It's like, oh, other than the fact that I've heard them before, I'm fine with them. I don't care. So that's kind of what I've found is people are very welcoming to us. They've treated us pretty well, and outside of the rare political talk, it's been great.
Yeah, I think most of it is just genuine curiosity because some of the work that I do still with the military as a reservist is back in the UK, actually. And I was there when Boris Johnson was elected and the Brexit, all that stuff going on. And I think it's natural to have an opinion about something that is just so crazy and is something that you don't see very often. And I think that's okay. That's tolerable, in my opinion, where people are like, oh my gosh, this is happening. This is what I've heard. Is this true? Whatever. It's the people who think that they know more or what to do better that talk to you about it, where they're like, well, like, why? Yeah, exactly. Yes. That's where it gets a little irritating, because then it doesn't really matter if it's Trump or Democrats or whoever is policy. Now it just feels like you're just talking shit about America.
Yeah.
And that kind of feels like, okay, well, I'm still American. You know, I might not support X, Y, and Z, but like, I mean, come on, it's still my country. And if you talk shit about it, I'm going to defend it or whatever. So, yeah.
Have you, since in your time here in Australia, have you learned stuff about Australians and Australian culture that you think, oh, they take something like
that? I think the willingness to engage in any conversation, or just like throw a line to somebody that you just see, that I miss. I didn't realize I missed that. Everywhere I've been, it still feels kind of like a small town. People are willing to engage with you, even if it's just walking by, throw you a joke, throw you a line. I remember we were at the library, and this librarian was reaching across just some metal bar to toss a book to a guy who had asked for it. And she tosses it, and it was the throw went askant, and the guy missed the catch. And she just looks at me and goes, it was a shite throw, but it was also a shite catch. And, and I was just like, oh my God, that's great. She didn't have to engage with me on that. I was just sitting there watching the interaction, and she just threw a line my way. And I like that kind of stuff. So it's got a warmer feel personality-wise. So I think I'll bring a lot more of that back. It's opened me up.
What about yourself?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. Oh, I can tell you what has been frustrating about the culture.
What do you got? What do you got?
No, this is so like basic, and like people are going to listen and be like, oh, really? But we came to Australia under the assumption that the coffee here was going to be to die for. And I worked at Starbucks. Like, we love coffee. We drink it every day.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm so excited for this coffee. I'll tell you what, the coffee here, not great.
Not great. You can't just get a cup of drip coffee, just normal, run-of-the-mill. Can't find it.
No, they're very judgmental if you ask. They're like, in Starbucks, we asked for drip coffee, and they're like, well, we're going to have to heat up a whole batch because no one orders it. Are you sure that's what you want? Like, not saying that directly, but basically saying that. Like, okay, well, we have to make a fresh batch. But no, the coffee here is just like Americano. It's like the espresso with water, which is, I don't know, It's interesting, it's different, and I was just like, oh man, I was so looking forward to good coffee, and I just we haven't had it yet.
It's not great.
Like, where do you guys, where's the shit coffee that we missed? The coffee that you guys don't even want to deal with. Like, where is that? Give that to us. That's what we want.
A coffee drinking has disappeared into this level of pretense.
Definitely has. If it doesn't have foam, didn't take 10 minutes to make, it's not worth drinking.
It's got a piece of artwork.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't want it to look like a leaf. I want it to just be dark black, and so I can drink it to stay awake. Yeah. That's what I want.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Superb. So that kind of brings me to WA.
Yes.
And so with my podcast, often I ask people about, what's it like growing up in Western Australia? Why did you come here? And that's usually one of the first questions I ask out of the box. Right?
Okay.
But I kind of left that till last today.
Excellent.
So, it is WA real. So the reason why I call it that is because the real conversation which we're having, but also at WA, and I'm always intrigued to understand people's view and stuff like that. And since you've been in this enormous, vast, isolated state of us, tell me about the vibe. Tell me about the people. Tell me about the things that you've noticed.
You want to go first?
Sure. Well,
it's good, bad, ugly, and indifferent.
Perfect. You'll get all of it. So we were not initially going to come to Perth for a while. I think our original route, we were going to start in Melbourne and then go east. But we had to register the van in South Australia. So we had to go to Adelaide. And we were only going to be in Adelaide for a little bit, but then we met Baz. he was extremely kind and gave us crazy good hospitality on the beach, so we stayed longer. But he was the one who actually recommended, like, hey, due to the weather, it might be in your best interest to go west and then maybe come back around and then do the East Coast last. And we're like, okay, well, there's...
good advice.
Yeah, so we headed out this way. And it was, the South Australia ends with the Nullarbor, essentially. So it was like this literal and figurative, just like brand new, like you cross the Nullarbor into West Australia, and it's just like you start to see trees and you start to see vegetation and animals. And then you get to, our first real stop was in Esperance. Yeah. And it was like the most beautiful beach we've seen since coming here. And we've tried to go to a lot, like in the Adelaide area, in Melbourne, and we were just so blown away. We're like, this is gorgeous. And then we got to Perth, and it's so different, mostly in a good way, just because it's so isolated. See, I feel like you don't get the pretentious city folk here that you might get in some of the more populated areas. Like Melbourne was a little more rigid and hardened, kind of like New York or Chicago back in the States. But Perth is just so like calm. I've just felt nothing but calm since being here. And it's just, even the downtown area, we've only spent a little bit of time there, but it's just like everyone just is like breathing here. Everyone's just like...
It's quiet, isn't it?
Yes. Which is, that was my first impression.
That's a good first impression. Mine, we came over the Nullarbor, we pressed it to Norseman, and there was a huge storm that we drove through. Lightning everywhere, gigantic rain. Fatty, our bus out there, our van, trudged along. There was a lightning bolt that struck 20 meters away. We saw the explosion, like loud thunder. So we made it into Western Australia. It was a test. It felt like it was like, all right, we got to earn this. Yeah. And so we made it.
Just let anyone in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, most people die on this road. So we made it. We get to Esperance. The water was unreal. Blue, danger of sharks. Gorgeous dolphins pitching themselves out of the waves. It felt like we had just gotten to like a place that nobody talks about. Like I'm surprised nobody was recommending this place to us. We stumbled upon it. Yeah. That seems odd, and then we pressed it over to Perth, and it's been pretty good. We've been incognito camping. We've found some great spots to stay, and the comedy scene has recently become welcoming. Like I said, had to get over those territorial roadblocks, but it's been great. Once I got over I was a little mad about how the comedy scene was going. I was trying to contact all the bookers, and it was kind of giving me the cold shoulder. They didn't know who I was or what I was doing. But I got on one show, and I think dominoes have fallen from there. So I had a show last night that was in Bassadine, at Bassadine Hotel. It was a wild show, a lot of hecklers. Tonight I'll be at the Fremantle Comedy Factory. So it's all starting to fall into place. Things are as welcoming as I thought they would be, as I heard they'd be. So I guess that was the bad mixed with the good. There was a little standoffish comedy-wise, but they've seemed to come around, which is pretty cool.
You noticed the space and isolation.
Yes, absolutely. I think at least I did comedy-wise. I think not a lot of people get out this way. So I think some of the machinations or the architecture that you'd see... you'd find a little bit easier if you go to a city where the bookers, who do I contact for this gig? They get back to you quick. They know that there's like a rotation of comics, that they book up fast, or they book up far in advance, or they have spots open for people coming through. It's like this place is so isolated that those aren't set up. Those wheels aren't greased as often.
Is there like a rivalry between like Perth and some of the East Coast cities, kind of like there is with LA and New York?
I would say that most of the East Coast would carry on and not really know that we're here. And really not know that we're here, right? Unless, like, the oil and gas royalties stopped coming into the budget. And then, from our point of view, it's interesting to ask me because I come from the UK, so I know what a big old sit proper looking city looks like with London.
Right.
You know, I go to Melbourne, it's just old and it's dirty, and it just doesn't have the history to back up being like that. Everyone wangs on about the coffee scene and the food scene, and but whenever I've gone to Melbourne, it just reminds me of all the reasons why I left England. The cloud cover's really low.
Yes.
Sydney's alright. I now have a challenge with going to big cities now, because I live in such an isolated place. When I turn up, like all those nervous systems firing off, I find it hectic.
Yeah.
But that's me. Look, there is. You know, if it comes to Australia rules football and stuff like that, you know, there is. But it's if anything, it's probably going to be more. You know, like the East Coast doesn't really notice the West Coast, and the West Coast has probably got a chip on its shoulder around that.
Yeah. Little brother syndrome.
Yeah.
When I just think, I really don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yes. So you've been on the tour so far 2 months. We've talked a lot about lots of different things. I suppose one of the questions I've got for both of you individually is, what have you learned about yourself on this tour so far?
Ooh.
Oh my God.
That I need adventure. That's I thought I wanted it. I think I just need it. I think I need to challenge myself, and if I'm not challenging myself, then I feel stagnant, and I dislike it. And this trip has been very fulfilling in the challenges.
What about yourself?
God, I don't know. I was trying to think. That was a really short answer. I had time to think about it.
Yeah, all right.
Imagine if you're on this podcast by yourself. Like, you know where the whole...
Yeah.
Everybody else does.
I know, yeah. Now I understand.
They always get the whole, oh my God, Bryn, what was that question?
Oh my
It's
God.
one of those consistent ending questions as well.
That's such a good question, though.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll give you a quick bit of time.
Let's see. What have I learned about myself? I mean, I guess just personally, just within our relationship and within the constraints of the van, to just communicate better. You don't realize, unless you're living 24/7 with someone else, how often you need to communicate and be direct about your needs and when you need time or whatever. So for me personally, that's been a wake-up call in terms of, okay, like I need to get better at that personally.
Understand my needs and then vocalize.
Yeah, exactly. You know, because it's so easy if you're not uncomfortable in a hot, sweaty van to make assumptions about what the other person wants or what you want. And so just being in those uncomfortable situations, long drives or whatever, being able to talk about stuff outright and not let it fester within yourself for hours and hours and hours on the road, like that is something that I've been trying to do better at, and I've very much learned about myself that I've just never been challenged in that way before. I've never really been forced to think about my problems and past problems in that way. So that's something that I've learned about myself. But I think additionally, this is just a crazy adventure and a crazy thing that we're doing, and we don't know where we're going to be in a month and a week and a day, and that forces you to just kind of go with the flow a lot more. And for me, I used to be kind of a list person, not really rigid, because this is generally how I like to travel, but I think trusting the journey is something that I've had to kind of learn to do, at least in the beginning, because I mean there was just so much flexibility and so much that could go right and go wrong. And being able to just be okay with both sides of that is something that I think I've gotten decent at, and that I've learned about myself. But kind of boring, but that's what I got.
Yeah, nice.
So, I believe sometimes things like what you're doing, certain things that I've done in my life that have been sort of big undertakings. The real reason for why you do them won't become apparent until probably 6, 12, 18 months after you've done it, after it's all finished.
Yeah.
But already, part of the reason why you're doing this will probably be starting to reveal itself. So why are you doing this trip?
I needed to get out from the cycle that I was in. I didn't like my job. I was starting to go down that stagnant path. and I knew that I couldn't keep doing that. Something had to break, and leaving the job, trying to pursue something that I wanted, that I loved, seemed to be the right answer with the person that I loved, with Allie's support and with her by my side. We'd done the distance thing, we'd been together, we did the distance, and this just seemed like a way to lock in both Allie next to me and go forward on what it is I wanted to do. So it seemed that seems to be apparent that is working, and that's starting to be the why.
What is the real purpose of this?
Well, it's so funny. Yeah, well, so a lot of people have asked that question. Why are you doing this? And
I'm not asking you right at the start. I'm asking what, as you go further into this trip, the real purpose will become more and more apparent.
Right.
And what does it feel like to you at this point?
Oh, goodness. I mean, I've always existed in a mindset where I should never really ask why. I should just say why not and jump in. Because people, they frame the question as if you're going to fail, right? Like, why would you do this? Because what if it all goes wrong? And I try to think of it as, why wouldn't I do it? Because what if it all goes right? And so the if it all goes right for us is, we have a podcast that is successful, that is real, that resonates with people. I get good at doing the thing that I love the most, which is creating content and doing that 24/7 whenever I want, in a space where it's okay to fail. And wherever we go after this, when we move back to New York or whatever travel we do from here on out, whatever I've learned in this year about both myself, Pat, and what I want to do, I mean, that's, like you said, that's when it'll become apparent. Yeah. But I don't know. I guess I don't really have a good answer for that.
I've seen our podcast start to take a bigger priority. I find that to be something I didn't realize was going to be creatively stimulating and satisfying. I think both for me and I don't want to speak for you, but you seem to be enjoying it.
Yeah.
We're building content for the podcast. We're engaging with our listeners, and it's something I didn't expect. So I'd say that kind of surprises me a bit.
Yeah.
And what role has Australia played in all this?
I guess kind of a muse, if you will. It's just it's a setting, it's backdrop, it's flavor, it's just kind of the kick in the ass that we needed to start it all. Kind of the safe space. I'm running out of analogies for it, but it's just it's the place that we've found is solid enough footing for us to jump into, at least for me, the things that I love.
Yeah. I mean, everyone talks about Australia and the outback, and they're like, oh, it's so vast and so open. And I think that's a good analogy for why this is a good setting, is because it is so open. And so we have room to fail here. We have room to really explore the things that we want to do. We have room to meet people we would have never met anywhere else in the world. And so there's a lot of parallels with that in terms of what we're trying to accomplish with not only this journey, this temporary journey, but our life journey together. And I think that's awesome.
There you go, you've answered the question.
Yeah. That was a great answer too. Yeah.
So, last couple of questions. What sort of things do you two do in van life to keep you sort of sane, grounded, healthy, measured?
So we work out, go for runs. Sometimes we'll do that together. If we need a moment, we'll just kind of run as fast as we can in opposite directions and then meet back, at the van. Yeah. But I'd say that's a big one. Reading. I've crushed a bunch of books while I've been out here.
I haven't read a book since I was 12. And I just finished a book recently, All the Light We Cannot See. Pat's a huge reader, so he's inspired me to kind of explore that part of me that I haven't touched in so long. But podcasts, other podcasts.
Yeah. Oh yeah, listening to podcasts. Just I like driving. I kind of like doing that. That's just for whatever reason satisfies my brain and my tactile skills. Feels like I'm playing a video game with higher stakes.
Yeah.
What about yourself?
Oh goodness. Honestly, reading is a brand new hobby. I got a whole bunch of books. We just got them at like.
Reading is a brand new hobby.
It is. I know, and it's so silly
Never
to
done
say
it
out
before.
loud. I'm 30. Like, it shouldn't be a brand new hobby,
Yeah.
but it is. So I'm excited to explore that a little bit and figure out what kind of stuff I like to read. Honestly, I know I've said it a million times, but creating content full time, I've never been able to do that. I've always had one foot in a job somewhere else where I'm doing something different, something that's more secure, that brings in more money. So just getting weird with Premiere Pro and video editing and figuring out how to make something look super appealing, even if it maybe wasn't. I mean, that's what I love to do. I love to edit photos. I love to. Yeah, I love that, and I get to do that all the time now in the van when we're on the road. So that's just been really, really cool for me.
Cool.
Yeah.
So the last question I always ask my guests, and we're going to get two of them now today, is if you could take a little nugget of information and upload it into the collective consciousness, so everyone just got it, what would it be?
That is a very good question. Little nugget.
Almost like,
Yeah.
click.
Yeah, whoa, yeah.
So if you could just take a little nugget.
I would say what we're doing right now has blown so many people's minds. So many people are like, oh my God, you're doing what? I can't believe it. And they always end it the same. They say, I could never do that. I could never do that because I have money issues. I have a house here. I have family. I have all this other stuff. And they just come up with a million excuses on why they could never do what we're doing. So I guess if I could put one little nugget of information in everyone's brain, it's that what we're doing is not that hard, truly. Like, it's daunting, for sure. It can be stressful at times. But you can just pick up and do the thing that you've always wanted to do. The only person holding you back is always you. And I never really understood that until I touched down here and was like, wow, we did it. We did it. And people said that we couldn't. People said that we shouldn't. And it honestly wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Yeah. It was just you save up money, you get your assets in order if you plan on coming back, and you just go. And I think people are still under this impression that travel is daunting and expensive and just crazy difficult to do. And it's not. And it's more accessible now than it ever was in anyone's life. And I think more people need to hear that.
Lovely.
Yeah, all right, my turn. Well, yeah, I guess my point's tangentially related, but very famous American writer Mark Twain said, the antidote to prejudice is travel. So the more you see, the more you understand. People are people. And I think the world needs a bit more of that as we become more connected through the internet and through all of the social media, all these things. It seems like we're getting further and further apart. We're getting diametrically opposed when the truth is probably we all kind of feel and think very similar to each other. And we have a lot more in common than we have differences, even with a person who's on the opposite side of the world. So I'd say if you can't travel, just understand that people are people.
Yeah, that's why it's so cool to see you do comedy and to travel and do comedy, because the common denominator with everyone, no matter where they're from, is laughter. Yes. People just love to laugh, no matter what. And that's just been so cool to see as a bystander to Pat's hobby. It's just seeing everyone's face light up wherever you go if you can tell a joke and make someone's day, make someone laugh, and take all these things that we put up here in terms of seriousness and really bring it down a notch and show that it's not that serious.
That's not a big deal.
Yeah, exactly. That is really cool to see.
Yeah, not to overinflate kind of a trivial thing stand up, but laughter is a human language. It's I think shared by every culture.
Yeah.
That's gold. Guys, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you for having us. This has been an absolute blast.
Awesome.
Excellent. And if people want to track your journey, where can they find you?
Instagram, Work Our Way, the Work Our Way podcast. And if they want to hit us up directly, they can contact us through our website, workourway.com, and workourwaypodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah, definitely.
Excellent. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank
Hell
you.
yeah.
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, this has been great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.